Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning to you.
All right, so today we are going to talk about more post-rotation stuff. What happens in August? What cards are we going to have available to us after rotation happens? And what cards are we losing? Today, in particular, we are going to be talking about post-rotation escape. So, how are you getting your Pokemon out of the active position or even off of your bench if you need to when you're facing an opponent? So, yeah, this is another video in a series that I've already made. If you want to check out some of the other videos, you can definitely do so somewhere. I don't know if I put them on the screen, but you can check those out. And yeah, let's jump right into it. So the first category that we always start with, is what we are losing. So we're going to be losing, I think, 3 really important cards. The first of which is Escape Rope. We don't have Escape Rope as far as we know moving forward. Maybe it gets reprinted, but for the moment, we're not going to have Escape Rope. So it's not going to be easy to just switch something out of the active and have your opponent switch something out of the active. Granted, Escape Rope was not as good as Guzma, but it was an item card, so you could use it alongside a different supporter. That'll be a little sad. Second card that we're losing is, of course, Guzma. Now, I think people don't always use this card just to get something out of the active. But in, moments where you needed it, you would throw down a Guzma, get something out of the active, and then maybe switch back into the active. It could work with a lot of combinations. But unfortunately, we're not going to have Guzma moving forward. And the third card is going to be Acerola, or Acerola. I don't know how exactly people pronounce it. But yeah, this was a card that basically allowed you to pick up any Pokemon that had damage counters on it, and put that Pokemon and all the cards attached to it into your hand. I think that, this was a staple in a lot of stall decks in particular. Any decks that had really big, beefy Pokemon that offered up a lot of prizes, didn't really want to give it away, you could throw down an Acerola, pick that Pokemon up, take all of that work that they'd done away, and then you could throw it right back onto your bench, attach an energy, and keep it rolling. So yeah, those are 3 big cards that we are losing. But I guess the question is, what are we keeping, and what are we getting that's new that can help us get out of those sticky situations? So first, let's talk about what we're keeping. The first category of which I'm just calling things that allow you to escape, but your Pokemon still stays on the field of play in some form. The first one is going to be a skateboard. I think we saw this used to great effect with Jirachi on basically any deck that plays Jirachi. You're going to play a skateboard, pop in a skateboard on, do your Stellar Wish, and then you can retreat out of there at the end. Yeah, I think that is going to continue to see a lot of play, and it's going to be bolstered by something else that we're getting as well. But yeah, skateboard, great option for getting something out of the active position. Lowers your retreat cost by 1. Really useful card. Second is Switch. We are still going to keep Switch, which I think is incredibly important. It just allows you, as it says, to switch your active Pokemon with a bench Pokemon. It is about the most useful card in this respect. Just easy item card, gets you out of there. Doesn't matter your retreat cost. Doesn't matter if it's asleep or paralyzed or can't retreat or whatever. It just switches it out. So I think that, for many decks, you're going to have to run 3 or 4 copies of Switch from now on, especially without the Guzmas or the Escape Ropes. So definitely a card to stock up on. The third is going to be an interesting one. It is similar to Switch. It is Switch Raft. Now, I think because we didn't really see a lot of water type decks recently, you didn't really see Switch Raft a lot. But with Slowpoke and Psyduck, the tag team coming out, I think that could really spark more use of water-based cards I think water still has a bit of a challenge losing Aqua Patch in terms of energy acceleration, but you could see more water decks being played, especially as counters to things like Charizard and Reshiram. So Switch Draft basically allows you to do the same thing Switch does, except it also heals 30 damage from the water Pokemon. So it's like Switch plus heal. It's a pretty good card. If you're running a water deck, I would go for Switch Draft over those 4 switches, or in coordination with those switches as well. You use both of them. So I think definitely a card to pick up if you're thinking about running a water deck. The next one is not really an item card, but more for lightning decks. You have Zeraora GX. I think that stays on the list. It stays on any lightning deck that you're running. It allows you to get free retreat basically with any Pokemon that has a lightning energy attached to it. It doesn't even have to be a lightning Pokemon. You can use this if somebody custom catches up your non-lightning Pokemon. I don't know what that's going to be post rotation, but let's say you have a Marshadow with resetting hole. You can attach an energy to that, pull it back to your bench, and it's safe. So Zeraora GX, still a really great card if you're running a lightning deck to include for those free retreats. And finally, you have Tate and Liza. Tate and Liza is an interesting card. It allows you to pick from one of 2 options as a supporter. But one of those options is allowing you to switch your active Pokemon with your bench Pokemon in a really tight spot. Could be an interesting supporter. You did see it get some play at NAIC in, I think, Stefan's deck, I believe it was. But I don't know how often you're going to see this card, but it's interesting, right? It's a draw card and it's a switch card all in one. It kind of does double duty depending on what you need. It is your supporter for the turn. So bit of a last-ditch effort if you're using your supporter to get out of a pinch. But again, it's important. If that 3 prizes is sitting there and that's all your opponent needs to win the game, might be worth it. So yeah. And then we're going to talk about 2 cards that allow you to take your Pokemon off the board, so to speak. So the first one is an item card, and it is Super Scoop Up. So you can play this multiple times, and you might need to, because for consistency, this card is not the best. You have to flip a coin in order to pick your Pokemon up. But if you get, I'm sure it's a heads. If you get a heads, you can pick it up and all the cards attached to it and put them into your hand, kind of like an Acerola, but as an item. So, it might be a good idea to put a couple of these into especially GX or tag team heavy decks where that they're going to be coming after those Pokemon. It's maybe less important than it was in the past because we don't have Guzma. So if you can get them onto your bench, they're probably a little safer. Even still, depending on the deck you're playing, it could be an interesting card to start including into those decks. Just to get Pokemon off the field entirely. And then the last one that we have is Nanu. Nanu is an interesting one. If you're running a dark type deck, you basically can, switch a dark type Pokemon that is on the field. I believe it's the active, with a dark type Pokemon that is in your bench of basic. You can basically just switch them. Now, it remains affected by, I believe, all of the special conditions, may even remain affected by the damage counters, but it's a way to get something out of the active position. And it could be an interesting way to, in a post-rescue stretcher world, sort of cheat stuff back out of your discard pile. So if you had to throw down a tech card early, or if you started with a really crappy card, you can use that Nanu, switch it out at some point in the game, and there you go. So finally, let's talk about what we are getting, new cards. The first of which is a really interesting one. It is U-Turn Board. Now, at first glance, this just seems like, honestly, a less useful escape board because it doesn't talk about being asleep or paralyzed, but it does lower your retreat cost by 1. And the nice thing about this card is that if it were to be discarded, instead of going to the discard pile, it goes back to your hand. So it's one of those nice attachments that you can put it on Pokemon and know that you're always going to get it back, right? It boomerangs back to your hand and you can play it on other Pokemon. That's super useful, especially if you're putting it onto Pokemon that, you know, you don't think they're going to be asleep or paralyzed much, but they have maybe 1 or 2 retreat costs. You really want to lower that. That could be really, really useful. So I think thinking about including these in a few decks could be really interesting. The second new card that we are getting is specific to Dark type Pokemon, but I think it's going to make those Dark type Pokemon and those Dark type decks as viable as Lightning decks are with Zeraora. And that is a stadium called Night City. Night City is essentially Zeraora as a stadium for Dark types. It allows your Dark type Pokemon to have free retreat. I think especially as we start getting into these stadium wars where you have to include 2-3 stadiums, people are going to be playing that Marshadow with Resetting Hole. You know, you got to have a few of these in your hand. If you're not playing stadiums, then you're going to be at a big disadvantage against many, many decks. So Night City for Dark type is a must inclusion. Probably at least a 2-op, maybe 3, depending on what other, you know, stadium text that you want to put in there. But really good card for helping you move your Pokemon from the active to the bench. And yeah, great card coming out. I think Dark type is going to see a big, I want to say resurgence, but Zoroark just won NAIC, so I don't know about resurgence, but a lot of Dark type love coming down with this new set. And before we go, I just want to talk about one other card, because yes, there's a decent number of options still for your Pokemon to escape, but also for your opponent's Pokemon to escape. But if you noticed, with many of these options, like Night City, U-Turn Board, Zeraora, Skateboard, I don't know if Zeraora would be affected by this or Night City, but I'm going to assume they will. You might want to counter that in some way. And a card that a lot of people have been playing is Absol. I think having an Absol in a few decks could be really useful in moments where, you know, you're playing against a deck that doesn't necessarily have that free retreat, but it has those escape boards and those U-turn boards. Anyone who's playing Jirachis, if you're not playing Jirachi yourself, or you know, even if you're playing Jirachi, you could throw that Absol down, make it really difficult for your opponent to really tech in 1 or 2 Jirachis a turn and slow down that draw engine that they have going for them. But yeah, that is it for my escape options. I think if you compare this to a video that I'm going to have coming out in the future as well, which is all about gusting, I think another really interesting video to think about. Yeah, there are going to be other options for switching those Pokemon, but these I think are the most viable options for switching out your Pokemon with your active, your bench with your active. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If you think that I missed anything important, which of these I think is going to be the favorite for you going forward, and what decks are you going to be running it with? But yeah, let me know in the comments section. And yeah, just know that I stream on Twitch as well, twitch.tv/Gyroshan, as well as posting on Instagram and Twitter, different like pack openings and gameplay as well. I'm playing online. If you have any other questions you want to ask me live, you can certainly find me on Twitch a few nights a week and drop in and say hi. But yeah, that is it for now. Thank you so much. And I will see you all in the very near future.